Well done! You've completed this module on core components in React Native, namely those for rendering lists and enabling text input. By doing so, you've enhanced your ability to create more intuitive and user-friendly experiences in React Native. Before you move on, let's review the skills and knowledge you've gained during this module. In the first lesson, you became familiar with the FlatList component. By completing this lesson, you are now able to explain how FlatList uses lazy rendering of lists to achieve faster app performance than scroll view and provide a smoother experience for users. Describe the syntax of the FlatList component, including the required props data and render item, and what information is passed to them. And use FlatList to render a large list in a React Native app. You then explored some built-in methods of FlatList. This includes extracting unique IDs from an array with the key extractor prop, rendering separator lines with the item separator component prop, rendering a header with the list header component prop, and rendering a footer with the list footer component prop. In the second lesson, you shifted focus to the SectionList component. This is similar to FlatList, but also adds the ability to render lists into sections. By the end of this lesson, you learned how to recognize the differences between SectionList and FlatList and identify appropriate use cases for each one, describe the syntax of the SectionList component and the purpose of its required props, which are sections and render item, and use SectionList to render a large list separated into sections, with each containing its own header. You then moved on to the third lesson, where you were introduced to the TextInput component. This component is for adding text input boxes to a React Native app, but also features some powerful built-in customization options. By reaching the end of this lesson, you are now able to understand that TextInput produces text input boxes that accept input from a device's virtual keyboard, configure a text input component to capture user input and store it as local state, and create a page containing several text input components within a scroll view component. You also came to understand the importance of handling the virtual keyboard and learned how to set keyboard dismissal behavior with the keyboard dismiss mode property and use the keyboard avoiding view component to prevent the keyboard from obscuring the user's view of other elements on screen. Finally, you reached the last lesson, which focused on how to use common text input props and methods. After finishing this lesson, you are familiar with how to pass props to the text input component to enable certain functionalities, such as adding placeholder text to a text input box and restricting the number of characters, and use text input methods to control responses to certain actions performed within a text input box. You now know what tools you have available for creating a better user experience when it comes to rendering large lists and enabling text input. You've also explored possible use cases for utilizing these tools, and you've applied your knowledge by building an example React Native app. Great job! You're now ready to move on to the next level of React Native development.